My name is Julia Carter. I'm 29, and I'm a paramedic. My world is sirens and split seconds, the copper taste of adrenaline, the hush that falls over a scene right before someone says the one sentence that can't be taken back. I meet people at their worst minutes and sometimes watch them become their best selves anyway. Strangers lace their fingers with a dying man's when the wife is still on her way. Kids hand me crayon drawings through the back doors of the rig like talismans. Crisis strips off the polish and leaves the raw truth behind. I used to think I understood that better than most, until the night the truth came for me wearing a white tablecloth and a glass of rosé. For 2 years I'd been with Ryan Blake, 30, handsome in the easy way that looks good on holiday cards. He was a solutions architect who could talk about roadmaps for 40 minutes without blinking. With me, he was gentle, almost reverent. He liked that I was steady. He said I made terrible days survivable just by standing in the doorway. I believed him. I believed in us. I believed that the quiet, ordinary love we were building could hold even when the sirens cut through the city and took me away in the middle of dinner. If there was a rough seam in the fabric, it had a name. Kate Miller, Ryan's ex-girlfriend, who, according to Ryan, had become a close friend after their breakup. The way he said close always sat oddly in my ear, like a picture frame hung a fraction off level. They had history, which is a soft word for a hard truth. They also had a ritual, a long lunch every Tuesday at a newer-than-thou restaurant called The Gilded Spoon, with a menu that pronounced at you. "We're better as friends," he'd say, and I'd say, "If it works for you," and then smile like I didn't notice when his phone lit up face down. I am not jealous by nature. Jealousy is noisy. The work I do taught me to prefer quiet, but there's a different feeling, older, colder, when your instincts tug your sleeve and whisper, "Watch." And I had been watching, even when I pretended I wasn't. On Tuesday, the sky turned the color of dishwater and refused to change. My shift bled into another when a pileup on the I-6 sent us chasing red brake lights into the rain. We triaged, packaged, transported. At 6:10 p.m., we turned the rig back toward base, both of us sour with exhaustion. I signed out, dropped my radio in its charger, and sat behind the wheel of my car with that familiar fog settling over my shoulders. How tired can feel like water you forgot to climb out of. I took the side streets home because I've seen too many people gamble with yellow lights and lose. Even careful doesn't always matter. A kid in a car with a lawnmower engine and tinted bravado rolled a red doing 40 and carved straight into the driver's side of my sedan. Metal shrieked. The world went skidding, hard stop, then dropped out from under me. I remember the smell first, hot and chemical, then the fear, finding my throat like a fist. I didn't cry. I didn't even swear. I checked. Fingers, feet, breath. Blood at my temple, stars in my sightline. Something electric and wrong burning up my left arm. When the sirens arrived, my crew moved like a lullaby I'd sung 1,000 times. They cut my door, braced my neck, slid me onto a board. I tried to make light of it. So this is what my haircut looks like under fluorescent truth. But my words wobbled. The ceiling lights rolled by like planets. St. Mary's Hospital swallowed me and spit me into a trauma bay, where strangers in blue called me honey and love and squeezed circles into my palm that I still felt an hour later. X-rays, a clean break of the left humerus. CT, concussion, no brain bleed. Lungs clear. Luck standing in the corner, smoking and shrugging like, "Don't make this a habit." "Do you have an emergency contact we should notify?" a nurse asked, damp curls stuck to her forehead. "My boyfriend," I said. It was automatic. Ryan Blake. Saying his name felt like pressing a bruise I didn't know I had. "He'll come." We called. The line rolled into voicemail, his recorded voice warm and useless. We called again. The nurse left 2 messages with the calm of a person who knows most things resolve if you keep naming the facts. He didn't answer. "Is there anyone else?" she asked. I looked at the clock. Tuesday, of course. The ritual with the tidy bow. "He's probably at lunch," I said. "Long one." "We can keep trying," she offered, kind. "Please." They cut the rest of my uniform, slid my arm into a temporary splint that made me feel like a scarecrow, and left me with a cool washcloth and a view of the TV in the corner, showing a weather radar busy with neon. Everything hurt. but not enough to drown out the small, steady knock of dread somewhere behind my ribs. I unlocked my own phone with my right hand. The screen was cracked into 1,000 glittering rivers, but it worked. I typed slowly, deliberate, like threading a needle with shaking fingers. Me, car accident. I'm in the ER at St. Mary's. Arm broken. Concussion. Can you come pick me up? My car is totaled. A minute, 2, 3. The dots came and went like a heartbeat that couldn't decide what to do. Then his reply bloomed onto the fractured glass. Ryan. Oh my God, Jules, that sounds awful. I'm so sorry to hear it, but I'm actually in the middle of a really important lunch with Kate right now. Can't just leave. Can you grab a cab? Text me later and let me know how it goes. I read it once, and everything inside me went quiet. So quiet, I could hear the fluorescent lights humming. I read it again, and the quiet sharpened. I thought of all the times I'd held a stranger's hand in the back of a moving ambulance because the stranger's person couldn't be found. I thought of the way children call for their mothers even when they're 36 and 6'2". I thought of the first rule we preach to our trainees until it's in their bones. You show up when it counts. The old cold instinct tugged my sleeve. Watch. No. Remember. A nurse came back in. No answer from him yet, she said softly, and I nodded like we were talking about the weather. She touched my shoulder, gave me the kind of smile adults give each other when there's a child in the room scared of thunder. I took a screenshot of Ryan's message, not because I needed proof. I understood perfectly, more perfectly than I ever had, but because I've learned that important truths deserve a record. Then I typed back one word, steady as a suture. Me. Okay. The word sat in the chat like a pebble in a glass, small and unignorable. I set the phone on my lap and let the hurt draw a clean line down the center of me. On one side, grief, humiliation, 100, what did I expect? As. On the other, something colder and surgical. There are moments when the choices other people make on your behalf carve your next step for you. He could not come to the hospital because Kate was telling a story he didn't want to miss. I have been called cruel for far kinder decisions than the one that arrived then. At the crash scene, an old friend had leaned into the ambulance, his badge damp with rain. Officer Dave Hanley, we've shared more midnights than either of us care to count. He'd said, your car's totaled, Jules. We'll get it towed. Who should we notify? Somewhere between the splint and the scan, I'd heard a nurse tell him we were still trying the boyfriend. I pressed call on Dave's number. He picked up on the first ring. Carter, he said, voice solid. How's the arm? Break, I said, humorous. The punchline writes itself. Concussion? Yep, no bleed. He exhaled, long. Good. We've been trying your emergency contact. No luck. I know where he is, I said, and tasted the clarity in my own voice. It tasted like rainwater and metal. He's at the Gilded Spoon, with Kate. It's their Tuesday thing. Dave went quiet for a beat, long enough to tell me he understood more than I was saying. You want us to go there, he said, not a question. I want the notification to be made, I said. In person, for the report. I let the words sit in their uniforms. The other words, the ones bleeding underneath, stayed where they belonged, inside my chest, where they could not be cross-examined. Another small beat. In it, the hospital felt incredibly still. Then, copy, Dave said. We'll dispatch a unit now. You focus on staying put. Thanks, I said, for the tow and for this. He didn't say, you sure? He didn't say, are you trying to hurt him? He knows what I know. The truth is not cruel. It is simply dressed without apology. After I hung up, the room resumed its shallow rustle. The curtain rings whispering, the monitor sighing, the TV radar looping storms that kept missing us. I watched my own pulse read out in small, stubborn peaks. I thought about the way Ryan pronounced the word important in his text, as if syllables could become shields. I thought about the way Kate once told me, cheerful as lemonade, we're just better at supporting each other as friends. I had nodded then, cheeks warm, mouth tasting like nothing. Tonight, in a room knit from bleach and low voices, I understood the math of it. If someone can't leave a table for you when you are broken and alone under hospital lights, you have already been eating by yourself. A nurse brought me water and a paper straw that folded at the wrong moments. Someone from your crew is on their way to check in, she said. Do you need anything else? I'm fine, I said. It wasn't true, but it was accurate. Thank you. My phone sat face up, blank, then lit with a cascade of notifications that weren't his. Group chats, a coupon for detergent, an app telling me to stand up and stretch. I didn't move. I folded my right hand over the splint and breathed against the pressure. Slow in, slower out. The way we teach people on the edge of panic to reclaim their bodies an inch at a time. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Somewhere across the city, I imagined heavy doors opening onto polished floors, heads turning, whispers threading a hush. I could almost see the scene as if I were staging it. 2 officers in wet uniforms, the careful walk between tables, the way attention changes a room. Ryan looking up, Kate's smile faltering. The words spoken in a voice trained to carry. Major vehicle collision, transported to St. Mary's, emergency contact, unreachable. There is nothing theatrical about blunt facts. That's why they land. My colleague, Dana Brooks, poked her head around the curtain, eyes searching until they found my face. Jesus, Jules, she breathed, then grinned when I rolled my eyes. You look like hell, which is to say, still better than everyone I treated today. Low bar, I said. She stepped in and squeezed my ankle. You call Ryan? I texted, I said. He's at lunch. I kept my voice flat so it wouldn't become a story. Dave's notifying him in person. Dana's eyebrows climbed, then softened. She didn't ask why. She knows me, knows the difference between impulse and intention. Good, she said simply. You need anything? Just this, I said, nodding toward the stillness, toward the small open space I had carved in the center of a very loud day. A minute to breathe. She stood guard like a bouncer at the door of my life, formidable even in pink scrubs. Someone coughed in the neighboring bay, and someone else laughed at a joke I couldn't hear. And I thought of all the nights I had promised strangers it would be okay, even when I didn't know if it would. I didn't know yet what would be left of my life when the dust settled, but I knew this. Crisis peels away the story you tell and leaves the truth behind. In the quiet, I let the truth arrive and take a chair. It did not ask permission. It didn't need to. My phone buzzed once on the tray, then twice, then settled again. I didn't look, not yet. I stared at the ceiling grid until the squares blurred. I counted my breaths and felt the line between hurt and clarity harden into something load-bearing. Somewhere, a door would be opening. Somewhere, a room was learning who we were. And in here, I was becoming someone I could live with. When you work in emergency medicine, you get used to quiet before chaos. The hum right before the alarms start. That's what the restaurant must have felt like. That charged, expectant stillness before everything breaks. I wasn't there, of course. I was lying in an ER bed, arm wrapped in plaster, watching the storm outside my window. But later, Officer Dave Hanley told me exactly what happened, and I could see it so clearly it felt like I'd been standing there myself. The Gilded Spoon is one of those places that pretends to be casual but costs half your paycheck, gold flatware, white tablecloths, and waiters who remember your dog's name. Ryan and Kate were seated at one of the glass front tables, right in the window, the display case for people who like to be seen. They were laughing, leaning close, the kind of easy comfort that's supposed to belong to 2 people who no longer have anything to hide. Then the front doors opened, and 2 uniformed officers walked in. The restaurant went silent. Knives paused halfway through meals, wine glasses frozen midair. Everyone in a place like that assumes police only arrive for one reason: trouble. The host started to stammer something, but the taller officer held up a hand and kept walking. They made it to the window table. Sir, are you Ryan Blake? Ryan looked up, confused, still half smiling. Yeah? What's going on? We're here regarding a major vehicle collision involving your partner, Ms. Julia Carter. The officer's tone was steady, official, practiced. She was transported by ambulance to St. Mary's Hospital with multiple injuries. We've been attempting to reach you for over 2 hours, as you're listed as her primary emergency contact. Ms. Carter provided this location so we could notify you in person. Every fork in the restaurant hit every plate at once. Ryan blinked, color draining from his face. Kate froze mid-sip, her lipstick staining the rim of her glass. The officer continued, louder this time. Ms. Carter's vehicle was totaled. She's receiving treatment at St. Mary's. You'll need to coordinate with the towing service to retrieve her belongings. We recommend you proceed to the hospital as soon as possible. And then silence, the kind that spreads. Ryan's jaw moved, but no words came out. Kate's hand trembled slightly as she set her wineglass down. Her cheeks were flushed, not from alcohol, but from the unmistakable sting of public exposure. People were staring openly now. Whispers rippled across the room like wind in tall grass. A woman at a nearby table gasped softly. Someone muttered, "That's her boyfriend?" The officers didn't linger. They nodded once, turned, and walked out with that calm, controlled gait of people who have already delivered the truth. They didn't slam the door. They didn't need to. The quiet that followed was enough to bruise. Dave told me later, "You should have seen it, Jules. The whole restaurant went dead still. He looked like someone had unplugged him." I remember smiling faintly, not cruelly, just a small, tired smile that comes when justice accidentally remembers your address. Back in my ER room, my colleague Dana Brooks had dragged up a plastic chair and was scrolling through her phone. She glanced up when she caught the look on my face. "What did you do?" she asked, half teasing, half serious. "I told the truth," I said. My voice was calm, too calm. She whistled softly. "That's never good news for the other side." Later that night, when the morphine had dulled to a whisper, I asked Dave for the rest of the story. He said after the officers left, Ryan just sat there, staring at his untouched plate. Kate started whispering. Something defensive, something about, "You should go." But Ryan couldn't seem to move. A few tables away, a woman whispered, "Poor girl, lying in the hospital while he's sitting here drinking wine with his ex." And in that moment, all the perfect image management Ryan loved so much, the polished suits, the charming smile, the carefully curated life, cracked like cheap porcelain. Kate apparently tried to recover the scene, pretending to joke, to lighten the air, but no one was laughing. Even Julian, the restaurant manager who knew them by name, wouldn't meet her eyes. Ryan finally muttered, "I have to go," and stood up so quickly his chair scraped the floor. He threw a couple of bills on the table, not even enough to cover the wine, and left. Kate sat there alone, staring out the window at the rain. Every eye in the restaurant was on her, and she couldn't look at any of them. Back in the ER, I held the phone in my good hand, watching the screen light up. His name appeared once, then again, then again. I didn't answer. Instead, I stared at my reflection in the dark window, the split lip, the bruise forming at my temple, the exhaustion carved into my face, and I thought, this is what it feels like when a life finishes breaking. Not a crash, not an explosion, just the last quiet crack after too many years of pressure. Dana leaned forward. "You know he's going to come running, right?" "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe he's going to sit with the mess he made. Either way, I'm not cleaning it up." She studied me for a long second, then nodded. "Good, because the version of you that forgives that easily, she deserves a rest." Hours later, when they moved me from the trauma bay to a recovery room, the storm outside finally began to break. The rain eased to a steady whisper against the window. I couldn't sleep. I just lay there, listening to the monitors beep their quiet rhythm, each tone like a metronome for the thoughts I was trying not to think. What would he say? Would he tell people I overreacted? That I made it public? That I humiliated him? Maybe he would. Maybe he'd believe it too. But the truth was simple. I hadn't humiliated him. He'd just been seen. And visibility is only painful to the guilty. The nurse came in around midnight to check my vitals. "You got someone coming to pick you up tomorrow?" she asked. I hesitated. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Someone who actually answers the phone." She smiled, not understanding the layers. "Good for you, honey. Get some rest." As she left, my phone vibrated again, a new message lighting up the cracked screen. "Ryan. Julia, I'm on my way. Please answer me. I just found out what happened. The police came to the restaurant. That was unnecessary. I was going to leave soon anyway." I exhaled a short, humorless laugh. Going to leave soon anyway. I set the phone face down and whispered to no one. Yeah, so was I. By morning, the painkillers had worn off enough for the ache to find me again. But the ache wasn't just in my arm anymore. It was everywhere, a slow, clean burn of realization. The kind that doesn't fade with bandages. Dana came back with coffee that tasted like burnt toast and loyalty. She handed me the cup and said, "You look like someone who just burned a bridge and doesn't regret it." I sipped. Some bridges lead nowhere worth saving. Outside, sunlight bled through the rain-soaked blinds. For the first time in months, I felt something close to peace, sharp-edged, but real. Because sometimes you don't have to chase closure. Sometimes it walks into a restaurant wearing a badge and says your name loud enough for everyone to hear. When you spend your life responding to emergencies, you learn what silence really means. Sometimes it's peace. Sometimes it's the sound of someone realizing they've lost everything. By the next morning, the silence had teeth. I was discharged with my arm in a sling, a list of medications, and a warning not to drive for at least a month. Dana offered to take me home, but I told her no. I didn't want Ryan anywhere near my apartment. Not yet, maybe not ever. So I called my older sister, Lila, who didn't bother asking questions. She just said, "Send me your discharge time," in that clipped voice that means she's already angry for me. When she arrived, her eyes went straight to my arm, then to my face. "Where is he?" I almost laughed. "Still digesting his lunch, probably." She shook her head, jaw tight. "You're too calm. That's terrifying." I shrugged. "It's not calm, it's clarity." She didn't reply. Just signed my discharge papers for me, grabbed my bag, and walked me out like a bodyguard escorting a VIP out of a scandal. The first text came while we were still in the elevator. "Ryan, Julia, I'm so sorry. I didn't know how bad it was. I was in shock. Please pick up." 2 minutes later, "Ryan, I'm outside the hospital. They said you were already discharged. Where are you?" Then 5 missed calls in a row. Lila glanced at my phone. "Block him." "I will," I said, "but not yet." I wanted to hear the pattern. How fast guilt turns to self-preservation. How quickly remorse curdles into rage. It's something I've seen 1,000 times in trauma rooms. First the tears, then the excuses, then the blame. Always the same 3 steps, just dressed in different words. We reached the parking lot. Rain pooled in the cracks of the asphalt, reflecting hospital lights like fractured glass. I got into her car and finally looked at my messages. Another text popped up. "Ryan, you didn't have to send the police. That was humiliating." Everyone was staring. I looked like a criminal. I stared at the screen, reading it twice, the way you'd look at a wound that won't stop bleeding. I typed a reply. "You left me alone in a hospital bed," then deleted it. People like Ryan didn't understand. Truth told plain. They needed silence, the kind that echoes. By the time we reached Lila's house, my phone was vibrating nonstop. Missed calls, voicemails, even a couple of long messages that started with "I love you" and ended with "You made this public." I turned it off. The next morning, I woke to find Lila scrolling through social media at the kitchen table, her expression unreadable. "Julia," she said, "you might want to see this." There it was, a blurry photo taken from inside the Gilded Spoon. 2 police officers standing beside Ryan and Kate's table, Kate's mouth open mid-sentence, Ryan frozen in place. The caption read, "When karma shows up with a badge." Hundreds of comments below it, some speculating, some laughing, a few defending me, others guessing at details. But one thing was constant. Everyone knew their names. Lila looked at me. "You did that?" I took a sip of coffee. "I didn't make the post." "That's not what I asked." I set the mug down. "I told the police where to find him. That's all." Her expression softened. "You are ice." "I'm tired," I said. "Ice is what tired turns into." That afternoon, a new message came, from a name I didn't expect. Kate Miller. "Hey, Julia, I heard what happened. I swear I had no idea you'd been hurt. Ryan just told me after the police came. I thought he was leaving to pick you up right away. Please don't blame me for any of this." I read it 3 times. Every word was polished, perfectly measured, the kind of message written by someone who's practiced at protecting her image. I could almost hear her voice, that slightly performative sweetness she used around people she wanted to impress. My thumb hovered over a reply. Then I closed the message and locked my phone. That night, I sat in Lila's guest room with my arm throbbing in rhythm with my heartbeat. The painkillers dulled the edges, but not the thoughts. It wasn't just about the accident. It was about how fast he chose his comfort over my crisis. I remembered his exact words, "Can't just leave," as if loyalty were a reservation he couldn't cancel. I realized then that I had spent 2 years mistaking consistency for commitment. He always showed up on time, always texted goodnight, always said the right things, but that was just habit. Love isn't habit, it's choice. And when the test came, he chose himself. The next morning, Dana dropped by with breakfast sandwiches and the kind of face people make when they've been holding back gossip. "So you're kind of trending," she said. I sighed. That's not comforting. "No, listen, the post about the restaurant, it's everywhere. People are calling him Lunch Boy. Someone made a meme." I blinked. "A meme?" "Yeah," she said, grinning despite herself. "You're the paramedic who got abandoned by a boyfriend at brunch. You're basically a legend." I shook my head, half laughing, half horrified. Great, just what I wanted. Internet pity. Hey, if it makes you feel better, everyone's on your side. It doesn't, I said. I don't want a side. I want peace. Dana's smile faded. You'll get it. But first comes the noise. By day 3, Ryan had switched strategies. The guilt texts stopped. The anger ones began. Ryan, you had no right to involve the police like that. Do you know what people are saying about me? Ryan, you turned a misunderstanding into a public spectacle. How could you? Ryan, if you'd just answered your phone, none of this would have happened. That last one made me pause. It was such a perfect encapsulation of who he was, the kind of person who could cause a wound and then blame you for bleeding. I handed the phone to Leela. She scrolled through the messages silently, then pressed and held the screen until block contact appeared. She tapped it. There, she said. Done. I didn't protest. The sound of that small digital click felt like a door closing on a burning room. That evening, Dana texted again. Want me to swing by and pack his stuff from your place? I've got time tomorrow. I stared at the message for a moment before replying. Not yet. I want to do it properly. Because if there's one thing I learned from watching lives fall apart for a living, it's that closure isn't something that happens to you. You build it yourself, piece by deliberate piece. And I was just getting started. By the end of that week, I had stopped waking up in panic. The ache in my arm was still there, but the ache in my chest had gone quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm has spent itself. Lila found me sitting at her kitchen table with a notebook, scribbling lists. She raised an eyebrow. Please tell me you're not planning another police operation. Nothing illegal, I said. Just logistics. She leaned over to look. The list was titled Extraction Plan. Underneath, change locks, pack his clothes, remove personal items, email notice, schedule pickup. Window. Do not engage. Lila gave a low whistle. You sound like Homeland Security. I've spent years cleaning up after other people's disasters, I said. This one's mine. Might as well handle it like a professional. That afternoon, I called Dana. I'm ready, I told her. For surgery or for freedom, she asked. Both. She laughed. I'll bring boxes. By the next morning, we were standing in my apartment, the one Ryan and I had shared, the one that used to smell like his cologne and fresh laundry. Now it just smelled like emptiness. Everywhere I looked, his fingerprints lingered. The coffee mug he'd claimed, the half-read novel on the couch arm, the jacket he'd left hanging by the door. Small ghosts pretending to be objects. Where do you want to start? Dana asked. Bedroom, I said. Always start where the lies slept. We packed in silence, the kind of silence that feels sacred. Every folded shirt, every pair of shoes, every photograph taken down from the wall was a piece of him being erased from my space, and from me. Dana held up a framed picture of the two of us at a friend's wedding. You want to keep this? I shook my head. No. I want to remember how I felt the day before that picture, when I still thought I could trust him. She set it gently into the donation box. By evening, every trace of him was sealed in cardboard. We stacked the boxes by the door, neat and orderly, like evidence waiting to be filed. Then came the email. I sat at my desk, fingers poised over the keyboard, and typed. Subject, retrieval of personal property. Ryan, this email is to inform you that your relationship with Julia Carter has been terminated. As you are not on the lease for this property, your residency is also terminated. All of your belongings have been packed and will remain here for 48 hours. You may arrange a professional moving service to collect them during that time. Contact Lila Carter at this address to schedule a 2-hour pickup window. You will not be permitted to remain in the apartment afterward. Any further attempts to contact me directly will be considered harassment. Julia. Dana read it over my shoulder. Cold, she said. Effective. Good, I said. I'm done being warm about people who leave me in the cold. I hit send. The next day, Lila was the one who met him. She told me later how it went. He arrived with his father and a small moving crew. He didn't look defiant, just hollow. He didn't ask for me, didn't say my name. He walked through each room in silence, checking boxes like someone taking inventory of a life he barely recognized. At one point, he paused in the doorway of the bedroom. Lila said he just stood there for a full minute, staring at the bare wall where the photo used to hang. Then he nodded to the movers and kept going. When they were done, he left the key on the kitchen counter. No note, no goodbye, just the faint smell of his cologne fading into the air. I didn't go back until he was gone. When I opened the door, the space felt lighter, hollow but breathable, like the air after smoke clears. I walked slowly through each room, touching surfaces, reclaiming them. The quiet wasn't lonely anymore. It was mine. Dana arrived later with takeout and 2 cheap bottles of wine. "To new leases," she said, raising a glass. "To no longer waiting on anyone," I replied. We sat on the floor eating cold noodles straight from the container, laughing about nothing. Every time my arm throbbed, I remembered why it was broken and what that break had repaired inside me. Around midnight, I stood at the window, watching the city lights ripple against the glass. The phone buzzed once on the counter. A new message. "Ryan, I picked up my things. I know you don't want to talk, but I just want you to know I never stopped caring about you. I made a mistake. I was scared. Please don't hate me." I stared at the message until the words lost meaning. Then I pressed and held until the delete option appeared. "Goodbye," I whispered, not to him, but to the version of myself that would have answered, because I wasn't her anymore. The next morning, sunlight broke through the curtains. For the first time in months, I didn't flinch at the sound of my own alarm. I brewed coffee, opened the window, and breathed in the air like it was new. Some people call what I did revenge, but it didn't feel like that. Revenge is loud. This was quiet, surgical, clean. He'd treated me like a background character in his perfect little narrative. So I did what every writer eventually learns to do. I rewrote the story, without him in it. 7 months have passed. Enough time for bones to knit. Enough time for the world to forget, or at least pretend to. My arm has healed. I can lift stretchers again, start IVs without shaking, and drive the ambulance without that strange ache reminding me what happened. But scars don't vanish. They just change their language. Every once in a while, when the sirens wail and we speed through red lights, I catch myself glancing into the rearview mirror, not for traffic, but for ghosts. And sometimes I see her, the woman I used to be, the one who waited, the one who made excuses for neglect and called it love. She looks back at me for a moment, then fades into the flashing lights. At St. Mary's, the staff still joke about the paramedic who had her own trauma case. I laugh with them. It's easier that way. But the people who know me, really know me, understand that night didn't just break my arm. It broke the illusions I'd been living inside. Dana still rides with me on shifts sometimes. Between calls, we talk about everything except him. Once she asked, "Do you ever think about what you'd say if he showed up again?" I thought for a long second before answering. "I'd probably just thank him." She blinked. "For what?" "For leaving when he did, before the damage went deeper." She didn't argue. She just nodded and stared out the window at the blur of city lights. Word around town was that the Gilded Spoon incident became something of a local legend. People called it the lunch that ended a relationship. Apparently, even the staff still talk about it. The moment when the police came in and everything froze. One of the nurses showed me a meme someone made months ago. 2 officers standing over a fancy table with the caption, "If you won't pick her up, the police will." I couldn't help but laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was true in ways the internet would never understand. Ryan Blake disappeared from the city a few weeks after the scandal broke. A friend told Dana he transferred to a branch office in Chicago. Kate stayed behind, but her shine didn't last. People whispered about her, the woman who laughed over rosé, while her ex's girlfriend lay in the ER. Even the ones who liked gossip found it hard to defend. It wasn't revenge, it was natural selection. One night after a double shift, I came home to a message request in my inbox. From Ryan Blake. The subject line just said, "I'm sorry." I almost deleted it unread, but curiosity won. "Julia, it's taken me months to figure out what to say. I panicked that day. I didn't realize how bad it was. Kate told me you were fine, that it wasn't serious. I should have gone. I should have been there. I think about it every day. I've lost friends. My job moved me out here, and I haven't dated anyone since. I know you probably hate me, but I want you to know I've learned my lesson. You always told me that people reveal themselves in a crisis. I guess you were right. I just didn't expect to be the lesson. Ryan." I stared at the message for a long time, the cursor blinking like a slow heartbeat. Then I clicked move to trash. Because he was wrong. He hadn't been the lesson. He'd just been part of it. The real lesson was me, learning that love doesn't mean waiting at a table for someone who won't stand up for you. A week later, I was back on night shift. A call came in. Single vehicle rollover on Route 9. We arrived to find a car upside down in the ditch, airbags deployed, driver dazed but alive. While the team worked, I crouched beside the woman in the driver's seat and took her pulse. "Hey," I said softly. "You're okay. You're still here." She gripped my hand, eyes wide with shock. "I thought I was dying." "You're not," I said. "You just got your second chance early." As we loaded her onto the stretcher, I caught my reflection in the window. For a moment, I saw the ER again. The broken glass, the message, the way the truth had unfolded. But this time, I didn't feel anger. I felt something gentler. Gratitude. Later that night, when the city was quiet and the streets were slick with rain, I drove home past the Gilded Spoon. It was still open, the same gold lettering on the glass, the same warm light spilling onto the sidewalk. Through the window, I saw people laughing, toasting, telling stories. I wondered if they knew they were sitting inside someone else's turning point. I parked for a moment and just watched. The rain tapped softly against the windshield. Then I whispered, "Thank you," and drove away. It's strange how easily peace sneaks in when you stop guarding the door. The chaos faded. The gossip died. The wounds closed. And one quiet morning, while watching the sunrise bleed into the skyline, I realized I was finally free. Not just from him, but from the version of myself who waited for permission to leave. Final voiceover narration. People show who they are when the world stops being easy. Some rush in, some walk away, some sit at fancy tables pretending nothing's wrong. But the truth doesn't need an audience. It just needs time. Ryan lost a girlfriend. Kate lost her reputation. I lost an illusion. And in losing it, I found something better. The calm that comes when the sirens fade and you realize the only person who ever had to show up for you was you. Julia Carter, paramedic, survivor, and finally free.